why I do what I do. I mean, I really believe that creative embodied expression, and that can take many forms, really supports our healing, our transformation, and not only the foundation upon which we live and get nourished by, but that we can go out and serve from that place. And when we can serve from that place, we can really support the collective.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Being Inspired Radio Show. My name is Amanda Johnson, your host, and today I have the pure pleasure of sitting here with a woman who I met a few months back in the magical land of Costa Rica. There were many magical moments that we shared together, but one of my favorite was when we were in the pool and all of a sudden we realized that we are essentially the same person and we are essentially doing the same thing in the world. And when I have connections like that, they mean so much to me. And of course, I don't mean that we are the same person exactly like that, but boy, she is just this bright light. She has such a gorgeous energy. Her smile, her radiance, it's out there, it's palpable. And I know that as you listen to her and as we get to know her a bit better today on this show, you will experience that same thing. So I'm very, very excited and honored to invite our guest on the show today, Jaime Fleres. Jaime is an author, writing coach, and editor devoted to serving others and the world through authentic creative expression. She is the author of Birth Your Story: Why Writing About Your Birth Matters. Jaime holds a master's in teaching, writing, and a bachelor's in women's studies and English from San Diego State. She offers writing coaching, content writing, manuscript editing, and more. Jaime's superpowers are her open heart, her capacity to connect and listen to others, and her ability to navigate and translate between the soul and human realms with ease. When she is not engaged in the world of writing, Jaime travels the world, expresses her own creativity through song, art, and dance, explores new ideas and growth edges, and spends as much time as possible in nature. She teaches an embodied movement practice called Goya, as well as workshops, ceremonies, and retreats all over the world. Jaime currently lives in the sacred Blue Ridge Mountains of Asheville, North Carolina. Jaime, welcome to the show, my love.
Hi, Amanda. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really, really grateful to be here with you and everyone who's listening right now.
Yes, same. So I read your bio, and again, I there's such a resonance with me in terms of how you're showing up in the world, what you're doing, and again, we definitely have different expressions and of that, and there's a similarity, there's a familiarity, there's a deep resonance. And of course, I had the pleasure of working under Jaime's instruction and facilitation while in Costa Rica, and wow, had just this transformational experience myself. So more to come, I hope, in our worlds coming together like that. So as I do with these episodes, I leave them pretty wide open, though I do ask each of my guests a simple question, not always easy. But we start off by understanding, what it is what they stand for. I truly believe that every one of us in this world has a message, a mission. We are here for a purpose. Some of us get clearer on that sooner than others, but there's no right or wrong. It's just a matter of whether or not we're really tuning into that. And when we are in alignment with that, I believe our life just expands and expands and expands. So one of the things that Jaime wrote back to me, and we'll see how much this gets incorporated into our conversation, is really that what she stands for in I love this, in 3 words: your voice matters. In 2 words, you matter. And I think that's is essential and so important to remember. Now, equally, I always want to know why people do what they do and why they stand for what they stand for. So that's how we're going to start this conversation today, Jaime, is by asking you this simple, not always easy question of, why do you do what you do?
Yeah, thank you so much for that beautiful introduction. And yeah, why do I do what I do? I mean, I feel like, part of that, you said like your story matters, your voice matters, you matter. Like that is so fundamental to me and my message in the world. If I had like a loudspeaker, that was would probably be much of what I'd blast out there into the world and what I do through my work. But why I do what I do? I mean, I really believe that creative embodied expression, and that can take many forms, really supports our healing, our transformation, and not only the foundation upon which we live and get nourished by, but that we can go out and serve from that place. And when we can serve from that place, we can really support the collective. I had the experience, as many of us do, oftentimes we teach what we need to learn or what we've had to learn, or just like a big theme in our lives. And so, for me, when I look back over my life, I spent a lot of my earlier years in silence. I didn't own the power of my voice. I didn't share the truth about my life and my experiences. And I felt the impact on that, both in my psyche, in my heart, in my soul, the impact on my body. And so I've lived that experience pretty fully, that experience of not feeling like I had a voice, not feeling like I mattered, not like just actually feeling quite silenced. And so that has given me, I've alchemized that through much of my own inner journey into one of my greatest superpowers, which is really handing other people the mic, encouraging them to tell their story, to believe in their voice, and to really use it as a tool for their own empowerment, their own embodiment, and their own gifts to the world.
Wow. That was fantastic, right, everybody? Holy moly. Every inch of me is covered in goosebumps right now. So much of what you just said there, Jaime, like, no wonder I felt this connection with you, this, the idea, going back to what you said around the creative expression and the embodiment of that, which can show up in many ways, and how that has a transformative impact on both the creator and the receiver of that creation, right? I think that's something I'm really tuning into, is how, as we go through the process of creation, we transform. And it sounds like what a beautiful journey you've been on. And you totally like cut to the chase of why I asked that question, which is because we've done this, or we've spent our lifetimes learning this, alchemizing this, becoming more of this for ourselves. And that's why we stand for it in the world. And what a beautiful gift that you went from being silenced to then at some point, maybe we'll talk more about that journey. It's like, then finding your voice. And now you're turning it around and saying, here, I want you to speak. I want you to find your voice. I want you to take the mic. Can you paint the picture of that journey just in a nutshell for us, or is it as deeply as you want? What was that journey like, going from not having a voice to finding it and now giving that voice to others?
Yeah, well, let's see. I don't know if I'll be able to say it as succinctly as I perhaps would like, but, early on, I will say, and one of the reasons that I'm so passionate about writing as a vehicle for self-expression is that in this phase of my life where I felt really silenced in the world, I found writing, and I used writing like a lifesaver, like a raft in the ocean, where I just clung to it, and I used it as medicine. And so I found my voice in that space, but it was small, but it was a beautiful, safe space for me to go, where I could process my feelings, where I could actually feel and experience the sound of my voice, where I could be with that. And I held it really close to my heart for a long time. And I didn't share my writing with anybody for years and years and years. And, I had this journey of, I kind of felt that silence. And then as I got into college, I started, things started to shift for me, but I really went up into my head and into the world of ideas. And I wasn't really embodied, but I was like, I can do what society wants us to do, which is like, be smart and go do things in the world and all of that. And so I had that experience, and I still, I was finding my voice, but it was still like in this dynamic of having to perform and having to do and achieve and get outside validation. And so, really my journey towards my own voice has been, one of continuing to listen to her, first of all. It really, like, all of this work really begins inside. It's like, what is my relationship to my voice? How often do I silence her inside of myself? And how often do I pay attention? And all of those pieces. And so for me, it was a really inner journey. And then I had tools as well, because we're not independent islands out in the world. We need the support of others. We need relationship. I really believe that we're interdependent. And so, by grace, I got a lot of beautiful tools came into my life, such as Koya, which you mentioned before, which is an embodied movement practice. And that for me is a practice of really opening the portal to my own soul, to my own connection to that which is greater than myself. And I began to experience a deepening of my own knowing, my own essence, and what my voice sounds like in the world, and I use sound as well. So there was just a lot of practices, a lot of resources, resources and a lot of just like a blossoming and an unfolding of my voice, and then feeling like, wow, I feel like we're stronger when we do things together. And when we can experience something, we can give other people permission to do the same. So that was my heart desire, was to share that same thing with the world, and to give other people permission to speak their voices, to know their essence, to know all of their gifts. And so that was part of the reason that I published my book, which is about telling your birth story. The experience of giving birth or witnessing your partner give birth was really giving, in this particular case, women a voice and men a voice to speak about this rite of passage that is birth, and to tell their stories. And so that is really my platform of, like, there's such value in telling our stories. And when we do, we give other people permission to do the same.
Yeah. Okay. So again, I'm just going to pick out a couple key things I heard you say, which really
Mm-hmm.
hit home, was how often it is the inner journey, and understanding what our voice is, who she is or who he is, what is he or she saying. And my favorite thing you just said was, how often are we the ones silencing it ourselves? So here we are going out in the world thinking, oh, we aren't given a voice, or people are keeping us quiet. And the radical self-responsibility to look within and go, wait, where am I doing that myself? And how often have I done that? How often have I ignored her, put her aside, or really just been like, nope, not doing that, and it's amazing. And of course, in the journey back to listening and hearing her and honoring her. What a beautiful journey you just shared. And then of course, yes, when we do things together, and then when we are willing to share our stories, there's something I've been standing for quite some time now, around revealing and expressing more of who we truly are. That's a bit broad, but it's for a reason, because for me, the specificity is that first we must reveal it to ourselves. And then as we do that, we express it to others. We express it to the world. As we express it, that creates a feedback loop, and it gives the other person an invitation to reveal themselves to themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's this ongoing cycle. Then they express it, right? So it's like everyone, we're in this beautiful, harmonious exchange of giving and
Mm-hmm.
receiving. So what is present for you in terms of how you are guiding people to find their voice or share their voice or tell their stories, or what's like really present and alive for you in that space right now?
Yeah, one of my areas of passion and sort of like a reclamation project that I'm involved in and want to invite others along with me is this journey to reclaim creativity. I think creativity has been, maybe it's part of the Industrial Revolution that, we're definitely coming out of and moving through, but we're sort of steeped in that mentality that creativity lives in the domain of performance and productivity. Like that's sort of where it was co-opted. It's like, well, the factories don't get, the things don't get built when we're all really fully expressing our creative essence. So like, let's bring it into the domain of performance and producing. And we kind of we've taken it out of the domain of play and pleasure and curiosity and embodiment. A lot of times we try to access our creativity through our minds, again, like through neck and above, but actually, and we know this, we create from our centers, from our wombs, or from our heart. Like we create from this deep place within ourselves, and that's the place of creativity, but it's also the place of sexuality. And so it's this like, how do we bring ourselves back to play and pleasure, and like actually creating from that deep source within, rather than this external model of like, oh, well, if we're going to create, it has to be consumable, and if it has to be consumable, it has to have this. And we like take our creativity and we domesticate it, and we make it like tame and like make it serve like this one thing. But when we can expand it and sort of free it and liberate it, we get so much more.
Wow. And I'm loving it. I'm going, yeah, we try to stuff it in that box and like make it fit. And I'm literally just thinking of a conversation that happened like 10 minutes before we started recording about, well, I've got this great idea someone shared with me. I've got this great idea. I want to create this thing, but I need to know like how, literally, I'm pretty sure he used the words consumable or digestible. And I thought,
Yeah.
interesting. So thank you for this, a beautiful invitation for all of us. And you're going back to where we think about, where does creativity originate from? And I mean, let's look at the biology. And of course, I love that you wrote the book on the birthing your story. And then of course, I have often likened the writing process or the creative process to the creation process,
Mm-hmm.
and where, of course, that's all done right from, I mean, even man or woman, that's
Mm-hmm.
happening from our root, our lower chakras, our center, and of course our heart, as we are connected
Yeah.
with that, right? And then with that being and that entity that we create. Okay, tell me more. I don't even know if I have a follow-up question. I just want you to keep going.
I have more. I have more.
Okay, good. Just
So
go.
one of the things, so it's also part of this is another layer or another thread of this is taking creativity off the conveyor belt, right? And putting it back into nature and organicness where it belongs. And so one of the things that I think is a big injustice maybe to creativity and to our interaction with creativity is we believe that creativity is again just about productivity. And so one of the things that I use as sort of a foundation for a lot of my coaching work is this idea that just like nature, there are 4 seasons of creativity. So it's not just, so productivity is what we think of energetically as like summer mode, like everything's in full blossom and we're going. We've got this like steady burning flame and we sort of move through, we're really outward and we're doing the things and all of that. And so a lot of creatives feel like every day should feel like summer. If we're writing a book, like we have to be producing a certain word count every day, or we have to just be doing and creating like outwardly. But again, creation has these 4 seasons. So the other seasons, right? So moving from summer, we have fall. So fall is that place where we really reflect. We pause, we take stock, we see what worked, what didn't work. We sit with our creation. We feel that like gratitude and satisfaction and everything that comes from having done this outward mode of creation. And then we move into winter, and winter is really, really where it all begins. It's like this sacred void. It's where our ideas come from. It's also the place where we might feel like nothing much is happening. Like, oh, I was going on this project and all of a sudden it got real quiet and I don't know what to do next. And a lot of us really panic in that place, but it's actually the place from which we create. And so trusting that fertile void or that fruitful darkness, like that exists. And that is really a part of the creative cycle. And then the last piece is spring, right? So spring is where we have all that fresh new energy where we're like, oh my gosh, I have a new idea and I wanted to bring it out in the world and I'm going to research and I'm going to talk to people and I'm going to collaborate. And like all of that richness is coming in that feels like spring. And so we really need to harness the power of creativity, the power of nature, and really honor each of those phases of creativity, know where we are in the cycle and really honor that so we can ally with it rather than fighting it. Like, why am I not in summer? It's like, no, you're in this beautiful place of winter and it's so potent here.
Oh, it's such a gorgeous gift for all of us who creatives in all walks of life to remember that, because I know myself, I'm sure you went through this writing a book. Absolutely every one of those phases occurred. And there is
Yeah.
a moment sometimes of panic. I also just can't overlook, and I giggle to myself because of how each individual person, you using yourself and me as an example here, that I break things into threes all the time. I'm always breaking things into threes. I also know a very common way is 4. I've just never been attracted to 4s. So I break
Mm-hmm.
it. I love how I was drawn very naturally, intuitively to a trimester phase
Mm-hmm.
of the process. And
Yes.
you onto the seasons. And I'm thinking, this is so cool. I mean, they're both right. They're both correct. They both share the information we want to share. I just love that. And those listening, why I'm even bringing this up is because when we go through life, I want us all to remember that, first of all, we're all saying the same thing. We're saying it differently. And the reason we say it differently is because it resonates with certain people in a certain way. So Jaime, you talk about it in 4s and the seasons and the nature, and someone's going to be like, oh my God, that totally makes sense. And then I'm going to be like, yeah, it's like when you have a baby and there's like 3 trimesters and they're like, oh my God, that totally makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I really want to honor that. And I want everyone listening to go, oh yeah, I may say something a certain way and someone else may say it a different way. That's cool, right? So we also don't have
Mm-hmm.
to put ourselves into the box of somebody else's framework, structure, process. Go with what resonates with you. That was my
Mm-hmm.
tangent, but I couldn't ignore the 3s and the 4s going on right now.
I love that.
All
Well, and
right.
they're
Yeah.
really the same. They're really the same, because the trimesters are really spring, summer, fall, and then conception is winter, so they really are, but it's a lot of times when we're coming to creativity, we've had that winter, we have the idea, we're ready to hit spring. And so, but the trimester model is such a beautiful one too, because that's also how, nature creates through humans, right? Is through these sacred 3. So yes,
Totally.
both and.
Both. And that is
Yes.
right. And
Yeah.
all right, what I love it. The taking creativity and taking it out of this productivity mindset to me is absolutely brilliant and I'm loving it. So what else do you have for us? Anything else?
Yeah, well, I have another, just another thing to just sort of explore with you all is, one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about is what creates an expert, and I do help people write books as well. And I feel like books can express our expertise, but it can also create expertise in us. And so I think a lot about this idea of the expert and how we're really shifting that paradigm in our society now. So the old way of expertise, we think about like the doctor, who was almost glorified as and there's nothing, I'm not bagging doctors. Doctors are incredible. But there was this old expectation or framework we put around expertise like that, where it was like, or it's the guru, it's the one that's like godlike. They're infallible. They know everything. They never make a mistake. That's the old idea. That's the old kind of thing that's been handed down to us about expertise. But what I believe is a better or a more functional model these days of expertise is the person who's deeply engaged in their area of expertise. So they're curious, they want to know, they're grappling with it in their own lives. It's a relationship coach that's like, woo, being taken for a ride in their own personal relationships. It's the creativity coach, who's like, wow, I really hear that inner critic like really chirping on my shoulder a lot, and I'm really working with her and wrestling with her. It's that we are deeply engaged in our area of inquiry. And so that shifts us out of like, we have to be perfect. We have to be infallible. We have to know everything. It's like, no, there's a lot of humility there. It also takes the hierarchy out of that frame, is that we're no longer like, you're higher than me, you know more than me. It's more of a collaborative model of expertise where it's like, wow, I am so passionate about this. I want to share that. Let's work together. It's just a different model.
Absolutely. And it does. It brings us right into that space of I am the quote unquote expert. I am that deeply engaged in my inquiry person in this one area, and you are in yours. So we're at this. Yeah, it takes it from the vertical into the horizontal plane, right? Where now we're sharing, and I'm offering you, giving you what I know. You're offering and giving me what you know. They feed into one another, and like I immediately could feel my shoulders relax to go, oh yeah, that's right. Because how many of us, and I can say I have been there, I'm not letting it stop me as much now, but for a long time, and for many listening, I'm sure can relate to, well, who am I to say this or to write this or to create this? Because I don't have the credential, I don't have the, again, expertise, or a lot of us often I feel like I've been there as well. It's like, well, I don't know if I can share it. I'm still going through it, right? But it's like that to me is, I love how you put that. Like that is it. Like we are deep into our own inquiry, into our own experience, and from that space, that is how we become the expert. We become the one to then have this information and message to share with others.
Exactly. Yeah. So beautiful.
Oh, you're like pulling this out of me. So, this is incredible. So in terms of your own, as you're doing that, like, um, I'm curious to know, because this, again, we're very similar in this way. How do you balance? And if you then want to answer something else, I'm going to give you freedom to do that. But the question that's coming up, I'm like, you can do whatever you want. The question that's coming up is like, as the creative that you are, and the coach, the support, the guide that that you are to others, how do you balance that? How do you honor both your own creative expression and that of others?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, because I do a lot of work in both realms. And I think it is really, I know that when I'm more nourished and fed in my own creativity, that I can show up for other people in that way too. And it's beautiful. I get this reflection of like, I so often offer the advice that I need to take in too. So I have that part of me that's always listening to my own coaching work. I'm like, oh, that's right. Yeah. Okay. I need to bring that in. But one of the foundational practices for me, and this kind of goes back to this idea of creativity, is that I really ground myself in practices of creativity for creativity's sake. So, I purposely, like, I love to sing. I'm okay. I don't think I'm the best. I'll probably never have a professional singing career, but man, I love to sing. So I sing for the sake of singing. I sing without any desire for feedback, for validation. I sing because I love it. I paint. I started painting a lot this winter. I just painted. I've never painted before. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so fun. I get to see the world in a new way. I'm just going to paint. Like, I'll probably never sell a painting. I'm never going to like have a show. Maybe not, but I love to engage in creative practices purely for the sake of just like enjoyment. And I feel like that keeps me connected to creativity, keeps me having like a healthy, vital relationship with her. And then if I need to go do something that has an outcome, or that's a little bit more masculine, which is beautiful too, and like needs to go out in the world, I can do that. But I have this like strong base of nourishment. And so I feel like that helps keep me balanced, is just continuing to engage in practices of creativity for my own sake and really engaging. I do a lot of work with people because the shadow of creativity is the resistance, is the critic, is the one that keeps us from creating. And I do a lot of work in sort of that shadow, the light and the dark there. And so I'm constantly, listening to mine, observing mine, like watching that, and like what does get me over the hurdle of resistance when I'm doing my own work, because I engage with it all the time. I'm not free of my inner critic by any means, but I know how to work with her. I know how to dance with her. And so it's a constant experience of that. And then I can take that to my people. And again, this comes back to this idea of the expert. It's like, if I never had to grapple with that stuff and I'm like, writing is easy, I got this creativity thing, like I wouldn't be in much service. But I can meet people right where they are because I know that dance so well. So I can go right to where they're struggling. And I'm like, I know that step. Watch this. What if we did that? And it opens it up. So we need to be like deeply engaged in our work in order to serve from that place, I think.
Yes. And because I think I've heard this, and I had a conversation somewhat recently around that idea of we think of the other person, there's an expert out there who can just list off the things, rattle it off. And I'm like, but if they've never, like, the reason we can share our gifts so clearly is because we've actually dealt with them. Like the person who never has, they may have a few suggestions, a few ideas, but if they haven't had to grapple with it, right,
Mm-hmm.
then to your point, it's not of much service. It's such a key point. And I love that you're bringing that up. Now, my question purely, somewhat selfishly and for our audience is, what does that dancing with your critic and your resistance look like? I think for so many of us as creatives, this is the thing. And I'm not expecting a full blown, here's everything I do, but give us a teaser, give us a taste. What does that look like? Or how have you, what is that like now in your experience with your critic?
Yeah, well, I have a lot to say about this, but I'd love to just really see what comes up right now. But one of the things I think with our critic is that a lot of us, it's uncomfortable to feel it, and it can feel like this separate like adversary. So in my conception and my current understanding of our work with the inner critic is that we can't abolish her, we cannot, or him, we cannot just like eradicate that part of our voice, and that we need to understand. So it's more of a befriending, I think, and a relationship building, like an appropriate relationship. So instead of being like, we're at war, I'm gonna put you as the other and I'm gonna battle you, it's more about like, what can I learn from my inner critic? And that was a big shift for me. I have a master's in writing. I was a pro writer for 15 years. I was almost done with my book. And if somebody was like, who are you? I'm like, I'm definitely not a writer, like I'm just, I just like could not claim it. And so finally I was like, all right, I was actually on this trip. I was in Iceland at an airport layover, and I got this big newspaper and this red Sharpie. And I was like, okay, inner critic, I want to hear everything you have to say. And I let her just run amok. And I was like, oh, wow, she's really mean. Oh my gosh, this is really cool. Okay, all right, okay, but here you are. And I just looked at it on this like big newspaper in red ink, and I was like, oh, just like get the icky chills, But then I got quiet and I was like, what are you here for? She was like, I'm here to protect you, like I want to keep you safe. And I'm like, oh, she's like, there's this vulnerable part that I protect. And I really care about that. And that means a lot to me. And like, this is going to, all of these ideas, these voices, these mean beliefs out on this page, like they're here to protect you. And I'm like, oh, okay. And you're old, like you've been with me a long time, haven't you? And I started to listen, and I was like, okay, I hear you. Thank you so much for your protection. I also really want to create, and that's going to involve us taking some risks. So I care about what you have to say. I'm going to ally with you, but you don't get to run the show anymore. And I left Iceland. I ended up in France. I did a lot of dancing and a lot of writing on this beautiful retreat that I was going to. And my inner critic was really quiet. And I was like, oh, she's been heard. Like she just needed to be heard. And like that shifted everything for me. So I always give her room at the table now, but I don't let her run the show. And I try to help people. Like that's a lot of my work, is that we honor her, we listen to her, we develop a rapport or a dialogue with her, but she doesn't get to run the show anymore.
Amen. I am blown away by the again familiarity of your story right now, and this brilliant reminder that, like much like a little child, a toddler, you have one, I don't, but I get the gist that they get louder and louder and louder the more we ignore them, right? I mean, I've
Mm-hmm.
stood in the grocery store and seen it happen, right? We know the kid who just wants the attention, and we're perpetuating this vicious cycle when we say no or we ignore her altogether, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you giving the voice, and my story of something very similar happened while hiking, and I literally had that same experience of going, wow, you are being so, I actually called her Magda. I had labeled her and I was like, what are you are just going on and on about? And then finally I was like, what are you here for? What are you here to
Mm-hmm.
show me? And she said the exact same thing. And she's like, I'm just trying to keep you safe. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
what? So, all of you listening, that is such a beautiful invitation and a great practice to get there, get a sheet of paper, get a piece of newspaper, get a wall. I don't know, and start to let that voice out and see what it has to tell you.
Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. All right, Jaime, before we switch gears and go into some other closing questions, what else feels present for you or alive for you to share with our audience on all these amazing things that you're doing in the world?
Mm. Well, the thing that's coming in is just, to really be gentle with yourself. I think that's, again, in that realm of the inner critic is like, there's that comparison mind of like, oh, I haven't had that experience yet of like really witnessing my inner critic, or I still feel my creativity sort of bound by productivity. Is just like, let yourself be where you are. And again, move from like that pressure cooker, that's like that critic kind of realm, to like play. So another way that I really work with inner critic is like, how can we find play here? How can we find a place where it actually feels good for you to create, whether it's your book or your business or whatever it might be? Is dance. Like find that place where it actually feels good, and take care of yourself in that place, so really just to, again, with that model of like, we are all doing this together, and that we get to explore, we get to play, we get to make mistakes, we get to learn, we get to grow, we get to like stumble and fall and pick ourselves back up again. Like that's just the way of it.
Mm. I don't know about all of you listening right now, but I want to like have Jaime in my life every day at this point. So please, please, please make sure to find her, connect with her. If you are a writer, if you are a creative of any type, reach out to her. Something that she said resonated. We're going to make sure to put her website in the links, but it's her name, JaimeFleres.com. Check the spelling of that though. It's in my heading here of the podcast, JaimeFleres.com. Please connect with her. We are not done with her yet. We're going to ask a few closing questions, but I just really wanted to honor the fact that there is like so many, many more conversations to be had and so much more wisdom to be garnered from an experience with you. So I want everyone to feel invited to connect with you more deeply. And now, as we shift into the inspiration segment of the podcast, I like to ask each of my guests these three questions. Of course, three. So the first question is, who is a source of inspiration for you and why?
Hmm. Hmm. Well, I have lots of sources of inspiration in my life. I'm super, super lucky and great and just blessed in that way. Honestly, one of the who's coming in now, it's funny because I have pictures of her in this room that I'm in, is my daughter. One of the things that I love many things about her. She's super, super creative and imaginative and all of these things. But one of the things that I love about her is that she knows, I don't know how she came in. I don't know whether, like, how much of it is just who she is or what she's been offered so far in this world, but she is so good at communicating her feelings and her needs and what she likes and what she doesn't like. And she owns it like unabashedly. And I love that about her because it constantly gives me a model of like, oh, that's right. That's what it looks like before we kind of muck with it in our society when we're growing up, And so it really reminds me to like really stand firmly and like who I am and how I show up in the world. And she does so with so much joy. So there's so much joy. So again, going back to that idea of like creativity as play and wonder and curiosity, like I get this beautiful model in my life every day of what that looks like embodied. So it's really beautiful.
It is. And I have had the pleasure of meeting your daughter, and I would agree tenfold. I mean, she
Mm.
is so inspirational and joyful and totally owns herself and her needs and her wants. And I agree. That's such a beautiful
Yeah.
testament. And you're right. Isn't it beautiful how our children can be our teachers and vice
Hmm.
versa?
Exactly.
Mm. What place or activity most inspires you right now?
Mm. Well, I live in these gorgeous mountains, and my summer, spring is my favorite season, and I just absolutely love to be outside. You know, I actually this isn't literal, but I feel like I start to twitch a little bit when I'm not out in nature enough. And so she's a place where I can go and really just be, because I do spend a lot of my time in, ironically enough, in this creation mode of like, okay, we're going to do things. We're going to, I'm an ambitious and passionate person. And so I do have a lot of like projects and things. And so I love going into nature because she just reminds me that it's enough just to be, and that I can just be with her and just like really receive. And I really, really just like, it's fundamental to like my beingness to have that connection with her. So.
That's so good. So good. And as often as nature comes up, I haven't heard it expressed like that. So
Mm,
well said. Beautiful.
thanks.
And what is I imagine you've read a book or two in your life. And
I
I
hate
love,
books. I'm
I know,
scared.
I can tell. I'm like writing it. Anyway,
Mhm.
what is one book that has inspired you on your journey?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. This is like the favorite question is always a hard one for me because I'm so enthusiastic and multi-passionate. I'm just like, oh, okay.
Like I
Uh,
literally changed it from favorite to one only because I'm like, is that going to make it easier for people? Like,
yes, yes. Well, gosh, I think I might just have to go with something recent just because there's so many books that have transformed my life. I really love books. They're kind of like breakfast, like it's a fundamental like foundation for the day, like just have to read. And I love, love, love reading. One of the books that I really enjoyed recently is Soulcraft. And it's not a new book, but it's a book by Bill Plotkin. And I love that he has a real call to a return to the soul and a return to nature and our natural essence. And there's beautiful, beautiful practices in there around, again, connecting to nature, connecting to our own soul, looking at some of the most challenging life experiences is a call to our own essence in a deeper way. And I just love how he frames it. And I love work on the soul. The soul just like is such a beautiful territory for me of exploration. And so that's just one of many books I've read recently that is just like has a special place on my nightstand right now.
I love that so much. And I know that
Yeah,
question is a challenging one.
so
And if
much.
I don't keep it down to one, we would just spend another 45 minutes talking about the books you've read, I imagine.
Oh
So
yeah, for sure.
at least. But if you're like me, I don't know if you are, but I had to put something on my website to be like, here are some favorite reads. Cause like, I just, books are transformational. So,
Yeah, for sure.
Jamie, this has been, I mean, beyond, and I knew it would be, and it
Mm,
was even more so. And I'm so grateful and excited about our continued collaboration and exploration and relationship and how we are again so similar and yet expressing those things in different ways for the world. Um,
mm,
I do not believe in competition. I can only see us as benefiting one another and benefiting others, right, through our gifts, through our services. And I'm so grateful to have met you and to now have you in my life in this way. So
mm.
thank you for taking the time to share yourself and your wisdom and your insights and your creativity with our audience today.
Thank you so much, Amanda. Likewise, I'm so grateful to have you in my life. And I'm really grateful to everyone here. Our lives are busy and full. And so when you take a moment to drop into something like this, it's just a beautiful way to connect. So I thank everyone who's listening right now for just taking the time to tap in. And hopefully something here has deeply moved you.
Yes, ma'am. Again, find Jaime, JamieFleres.com, JaimieFleres.com. Link in the show notes along with the books she's recommended and has written so you can find out more about her. And if you liked this episode, if something really did spark, I guarantee one or two or 10 things struck you in our conversation, please forward it to a friend, share it. You can always leave a rating or a review so that more and more people can be notified or know of these conversations. And then, of course, if you haven't, be sure to subscribe to the show so that you can be notified when other amazing people like Jaime come on and share their insight, wisdom, and inspiration. Thank you from the bottom of my heart as well, everything Jaime said and more. And until next